The 2025 Reese's Senior Bowl is officially in the books. The game is tomorrow, but for me, I typically pay attention to the practice sessions. The one on ones are really what I look at. You can look at the 7-on-7s for some of the linebackers and stuff, but the one on ones and the practices are really what I value when it comes to the Senior Bowl. And the practices ended yesterday. So we are going to be talking about 30 different players that either boosted or hurt their draft stock. This legitimately could have been a 2 hour long video. I could have talked about 100 different players in today's episode, but we just went with 30. This was a very good group down in Mobile. Jim Nagy continues to do an unbelievable job of just acquiring talent for this game. We are going to talk about a couple of honorable mentions that unfortunately didn't end up making the cut. Damian Martinez from Miami really showed out as a pass protector. That's something that he hadn't really shown at Miami. Thought he had a really strong week. Terrence Ferguson, the tight end from Oregon, really strong week. Showed out as a pass catcher. Looked way more athletic than what you saw on tape. Was able to make some contested grabs across the middle. I also thought Thomas Fidone, the tight end from Nebraska, quietly put together a really strong week there in Mobile. Made some incredible catches, played well through contact. I thought he's a guy I haven't really looked into the tape yet, but I'm excited to see what he brought to the table. Jack Kaiser, the linebacker from Notre Dame, had a really good week in coverage. Mac McWilliams from UCF had a really strong week. I thought Bilal Cohn, the cornerback from Western Michigan, had a strong week. There's a lot of guys that we could have talked about. Those are just a few of the honorable mentions that come to mind, as well as Walter Nolan. But before we get into this video and really start to look at some of these names, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. This is not an easy project to put together. If you guys want more notes on some of the players that maybe were honorable mentions or that we didn't talk about, you want to know how they performed, on my draft guide, I have an All-Star Bowl tab where you guys can go and check out some of the notes on not just the Senior Bowl prospects, but some of the guys from the Shrine Bowl, guys that really stuck out to me. So if you guys want that, that will be linked down in the description below. It's only $5 a month. You get my full big board, full draft guide, and I highly recommend it. But let's get into it. We are going to be going in order of position that I have on my board. So we're going to start at the quarterback spot, and it is Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe is the only quarterback we are going to be talking about, and I've got to stock down on him. I thought he had an interesting week. It starts with the accuracy. He is one of the most interesting quarterbacks that I have ever seen because we know how unbelievable of an athlete he is. If you get this guy on the run, he's virtually unstoppable. He's faster than some of the running backs in this class. He's got top end speed that is probably going to be in the 4.4s. He has an absolute cannon of an arm, but I think the week really started off poorly for him. When they did the measurements here on Sunday, his hand size was not great. He weighed in at 6'1", 220, but 8 3/4 inch hands. Pretty small for the quarterback position. And I know we do this. We did it with Kenny Pickett. We did it with Jared Goff. Oh, he's got tiny hands. How is that going to profile? It does matter, unfortunately. Like, Kenny Pickett hasn't had a good career. Jared Goff has had some inconsistencies in cold weather games, and your hands are a big part of gripping the football. 8 3/4 inch, not great size for the hands, but it was the accuracy with Jalen Milroe that I felt like was all over the place. Threw a few deep balls that were really nice. I believe it was the first day of practice, though. Got baited by Billy Bowman. Billy Bowman picked him off. Day 2, Jack Kaiser was able to get him in the 7-on-7s. His accuracy was all over the place, and he looked really conservative, really all throughout practice. Check downs, left and right, was not letting it rip. Now, on the third day, it looks like, and from everything on the ground, he had a much better day. He looked more comfortable. He was more accurate with the football. That's what you want to see. But the first 2 days, I felt like were really inconsistent for him. The accuracy was not there. And it's really tough for him when you got the small hands. He was a guy that I thought was clearly the QB3 in this class. But from what I saw this week, I feel like he is going to be way more of a project than I think even I thought at first. And I thought he was going to sit for 2 years. He's got a ton of development to do. I've moved him down right now to QB6. I think Jackson Dart had a good week. Will Howard, and I got another third guy. I'm not going to say it now, but he is a big wild card for me in this class that I'm really a big fan of. Not a lot to love from Milroe, but definitely a positive third day, but I think overall a down week from Milrow. Moving on to the running back position, we mentioned Damian Martinez. Could have mentioned Trevor Etienne. We could have mentioned Marcus Yarns. There were a lot of guys there, but I ended up going here as my number one running back riser of the week. A player that I really got into his tape. Once I saw he accepted a Senior Bowl invite, I'm like, let me look into LaQuint Allen and just kind of look at what he brings to the table. This is a guy that will be getting a prospect spotlight probably in the next 2 weeks. He is absolutely unbelievable. I think he is a top 10 running back in this class. And that might be like, oh, that's not that impressive. No, in this running back class, that's incredibly impressive. This class is absolutely loaded. I thought he had a very strong week. The measurements with him, 6 foot, 207 pounds, 10 and a quarter inch hands, 32 and a half inch arms, and a 76 and 3/4 inch wingspan. Really great size for the running back position. This is a guy that is going to be a versatile 3-down back at the next level. And it wasn't so much what he did on the ground. He's super explosive. He's quick. He's shifty. He's got all that. He is one of the best receiving backs in all of college football. And we saw that all week, just out of the backfield, ran a plethora of routes, was able to get open, create separation in one-on-one matchups. And then he had some of the best hands of any player down in Mobile. I'm a big fan of LaQuint Allen. I think he's going to end up being a really good running back at the next level. I think he is a firm day 2 selection for me right now. He's young, he's got athleticism, and if he can consistently catch passes out of the backfield, this is like the Tyrone Tracy. That is my comp for him right now because Tyrone Tracy had great measurements, was fast, but was a receiver converted running back that had some of the best hands in the group. I think LaQuint Allen has that type of upside, and I think he might be even better given age. Just so many positive things to say about LaQuint Allen, and he was one of my favorite players to watch this week. The favorite player for most people to watch all week was Oregon wide receiver Tez Johnson. I thought Tez Johnson was virtually unguardable all week long, and I mean, turn on the Oregon tape. This shouldn't come as much of a surprise. This is a guy that is going to be in consideration to run the fastest 40 of anybody at the combine. He is going to be a firm 4.3 guy. But it's not necessarily the long speed that I'm just like blown away with Tez Johnson. It's the footwork, it's the hands, and it's the ability to create separation. We talked about that when we did my prospect breakdown on him because he is one of the fastest, shiftiest receivers in the country. If he gets a step, he can jab one way, cut the other way. He created separation on every corner he went up against. I don't know. There were very few reps where it's like, yeah, he didn't win that rep. First day, Azariah Thomas, who had an awesome week, by the way. We'll get to him later. Tez Johnson put him in a blender. He was just putting DBs in conflict left and right, creating separation, and I was blown away with what he was able to do. Now, it wasn't all great for Tez Johnson because we have to talk about these measurements for him. 5'9", which you kind of expected him to come in at around 5'8", 5'9", so nothing terrible there. 8.5-inch hands, pretty small. 29 to 7/8-inch arms, not great. 73-inch wingspan, didn't love that. 156 pounds. That is one of these, that would be the smallest receiver in football right now, and one of the smallest measurements, I think, since like the 90s. He is very slim. You have to, if you're drafting Tez Johnson, you have to know what you're going to do with him. You have to get him open releases. You got to get him on screens, and you just got to get him the ball in space because he is not going to do well against physical contact. And I think he's shown the ability to create separation. If he's got off coverage, he's going to be a menace, but you got to get him open releases. You've got to be able to get him in space. And I'm going to be very curious to see how NFL teams decide to use him. But overall, just the route running, the ability to create separation, was blown away by Tez Johnson. Thought he was a big winner of the week. Another big winner at the wide receiver position is Jack Besh. Jack Besh, we talked about him. I know I've been a little bit late to Jack Besh. I posted about him on Twitter probably 2 months ago. I was like, TCU's got a pair of awesome receivers. And I remember someone commented, they're like, Savion Williams is the most underrated receiver in the class. I'm like, I don't think he's the best receiver on this team. And Jack Besh was absolutely incredible. He's sneaky fast. And I know we say that every year with these white receivers. We're like, he's sneaky athletic. He's got some speed. Jack Bech is a little bit different, though. Jack Bech, when you watch him on tape, my good friend Broshmo, he said this perfectly. You can't tell if he's fast or not on tape. In the one-on-one drills, he looked fast. He is a nuanced route runner who knows how to create separation, and he's a guy that will absolutely block his tail off. He is a physical, tough as nails competitor, and I loved everything we saw from him. The hands were incredible. It seemed like he caught just about everything thrown his way. On day one, I believe it was on the 7-on-7 drills or on the 11-on-11s. A pass over the middle kind of got out of control. He made an incredible diving grab with contact and made it look easy. He is a player that makes the tough catches look routine. He wins the 50-50 balls. He's got good hands, 8 7/8, maybe a little bit small, but 6'1", 218 pounds, just a nuanced route runner that is quick when breaking out of his routes. Obviously, playing with a chip on his shoulder. We talked about it in the prospect breakdown. His brother Tiger passed away. Every player at the Senior Bowl is wearing the decal on the back of their helmets with number 7, the Tiger on there. So you'll love to see that. But I think Jack Bech, look, I'm going to be higher on him than the consensus is. I think I have been. I had him as wide receiver 8 coming into the week. He is my number 5 receiver in this class, and I would take him in the first round. I really would. I think he has everything you want in a competitor, in a receiver, and he is just going to do everything for you. He's not going to be a first-round pick, but I would consider taking him in round 1. I think he is that good of a prospect, and he had an incredible week down in Mobile. Another wide receiver that I think really boosted their stock was Jalen Knoll. I did a prospect breakdown on him just last night, so if you haven't checked that one out, be sure to do so. Jalen Knoll, very similar to the Tez Johnson stuff. Came into the week, didn't love what I saw. 5'9", 196 pounds. At least he's not 156. He's got 40 pounds on Tez Johnson, which is insane. But I thought that 8.5-inch hands, 72.5-inch wingspan, didn't really love what we saw from Knoll in terms of the measurements. I was like, let's see what he does. And very similarly to Bech, when you watch Knoll on tape, is he fast or is he just like really quick? And it's kind of hard to get a gauge. He definitely showed the speed. I thought, once again, one of the best separators in the entire event. He just was able to create separation, win the one-on-ones, and make big plays happen, which I loved to see. But it actually had nothing to do with the route running. We knew that was on tape with Knoll. We knew he could create separation at a high level. What it really broke down to for me that impressed me, the body control with Jalen Knoll is absolutely phenomenal. And I don't think even I really gave him credit for that in the video. He made some incredible grabs throughout the entire week. He had a back shoulder fade in coverage where I thought he adjusted in the air perfectly to the football, had another diving grab. He is undersized, but this guy plays bigger than his size. He's built a little bit stockier. We mentioned 196, so he's pretty built for a guy who's 5'9", but he just goes up and attacks the football in the air. He makes the tough catches look easy for a guy his size. He can create separation, and I think he plays well through physicality, which you don't normally see from these smaller wide receivers. I'm a huge fan. He does remind me a lot of Malik Washington from last year. That was my comp for him. He might have a thing or two on Malik Washington in terms of just the physicality, but I thought Jalen Knoll was awesome all week long, had a really strong day one, and just carried on throughout the entire week. Was a major winner for me, and is a guy who, spoiler alert, he is going to be in my top 10 receivers, I think. And I didn't see that coming into the year. Coming into the year, I didn't think he was going to be drafted. So for him to be in my top 10 receivers, huge testament to the player Jalen Knoll is, and I thought he was awesome. He was better than Jaden Higgins this week. So that's saying something. I loved what I saw from him today. Another receiver that I was really impressed by was Washington State receiver Kyle Williams. Shout out to my guy Cole P NFL on X, a guy that was on Kyle Williams, put him in his top 50. And I was like, once he got the Senior Bowl invite, I'm like, let me take a look at Kyle Williams, see what the hype is about. And he did not disappoint me one bit. The tape is really good. I mean, he's a guy that played on the boundary, but is going to probably be a slot receiver at the next level. The measurements, he came in at 5'10", 182, 8 3/4 inch hands, 30 and 5/8 inch arm length, and 72 and a quarter inch wingspan. Again, shorter arms. I didn't love to see that. I know everyone is clowning. He had one play, particularly in day 3, where his press release was just really bad. It took like 2 or 3 seconds for him to really get into his release package. That was really the only bad moment I saw from Kyle Williams throughout the 3 days of practice. I thought he had an awesome first few days of practice. Day 1, I was really, really impressed. Just was able to win deep. The speed with him, I think he's the fastest guy that we've talked about so far that's not named Tez Johnson. He has legitimate speed. He's going to be a low 4.4, guys, and I have no doubt in my mind about that. He's super fast, and not only is he fast, I think he's pretty shifty too. And once again, a guy that was just winning with separation, stop and go ability, the ability to run comeback routes and get open across the middle. Super impressed by that. And then once again, there was a rep earlier today. Everyone wanted to point at the bad rep that he had. The rep against Tommy Hill in the red zone where he absolutely burns him and then does this sick comeback across the middle. He was awesome all week long. The release package, the first step off the line of scrimmage, explosive. The speed, incredible. The hands, I thought he made some really good grabs. This is a player that is not getting the respect that I think they deserve in this wide receiver class, and I think they should be. He's got speed. He can create separation, and I think he's going to be a 4th-round pick at the very latest right now. He's going to be a guy that's going to be in my top 20 receivers. He just is. I love what I saw from him. It was one of the biggest standouts at the receiver position for me at the Senior Bowl. Another standout for me was Arian Smith, and I know I am not the biggest Arian Smith guy. I think I probably tweeted Arian Smith out about 7 times this year that he was one of the worst receivers I've seen in college football. I still stand by that. I still think Arian Smith had some brutal moments last year and just back-breaking plays for Georgia. But there was something different. Now, he had a couple of bad drops. That's what he's got to get cleaned up. If he can get the drops cleaned up, Arian Smith is a really intriguing player. And he's going to be lower on boards because this is just a guy who seemingly dropped everything thrown his way. He had 10 drops. He had 10 drops in 2024. That's just unacceptable. This is a guy that I had a priority UDFA grade on, and now I see him probably as a 5th to 6th round guy. Do I think he's going to get taken much higher than that? No, but this is a guy that I would not be surprised in the slightest if Arian Smith is the fastest player at the combine this year and he runs a 4.2. He is so blazing fast, and it's pretty remarkable. His first step explosiveness off the line of scrimmage, incredibly impressive. And I felt like time and time again, he was just making good plays. And I thought he was really good. Measurements solid, 9-inch hands, 31 and 5/8 inch wingspan, 76 and a quarter inch arms. Overall, good day, good week, but we talked about it. It's the speed with him that I felt like was really impressive. But it was actually day 2. It felt like he was one of the most dominant receivers on the field. Had a couple of really nice plays, played well through some physicality, which you loved. His ability to create separation, I hadn't seen that from him at Georgia. He was getting open across the middle of the field with ease, it felt like at times. Super shifty, ran some nuanced routes that I didn't really see from him. He's an interesting one because if he can get the drops cleaned up, this is a guy that you could talk yourself into as a 2nd or 3rd round pick because I think the tools are really enticing. But unfortunately, 10 drops, had some drop issues here. Overall, I thought it was a good week. He went up my board pretty significantly, and I think he's going to be an interesting player to kind of watch throughout the rest of this process. Now we're going to move on to the tight ends. And we talked about Terrence Ferguson in the open, how he was a player that was an honorable mention for me. There were 2 tight ends really that really stuck out to me. It was Elijah Arroyo that really stuck out. First of all, the measurements, that was one that I was blown away by. 9 and 5/8 inch hands, excellent numbers. 33 and an 1/8 inch wingspan, really good. 33 and an 1/8 inch arms, and then 81 and an 1/8 inch wingspan. Really good measurements from him. And then we get to day one, and he is just lighting guys up. He had a rep on Trey Rucker where he runs a nasty, he cuts out like he's going towards the sideline and then changes direction so fluidly with ease to the opposite side of the field and just got wide open. Made so many just routine plays like that. This is a guy that is probably going to be a move tight end at the next level, but the blocking upside is there. Didn't have a great season. 590 yards, 7 touchdowns, but he's my tight end 3 now. I love Harold Fannin Jr. Elijah Arroyo is Harold Fannin Jr. in a bigger body and with a little bit more juice. I think he can be that type of player for you. He is a really, really impressive athlete that just felt like he was unstoppable throughout the entire week. Loved what we saw from him, was a massive winner, and he's going to be a guy that's going to get talked about a lot through this pre-draft process because he's got good hands, he can create separation, and if he can be a positive force, yeah, he's going to be an awesome player at the next level. A big winner of the week for me. Another tight end that I really liked was Mason Taylor. Now, Mason Taylor, not really a guy that I loved at any point. I felt like he's fine. I feel like he's good enough. I don't think he's a great tight end by any stretch of the imagination. He makes some good plays here, makes some good plays there, but I don't think he's this elite tight end that's going to be a difference maker at the next level. And I was kind of wrong about that. And it wasn't really anything in particular that he did. He measured in well. Once again, I thought was a player. 6'4", 250, 9 7/8 inch hands, 32 7/8 inch arm length, 78 1/4 inch wingspan. Solid measurements as a whole. But it was the athleticism that I really felt like I just didn't see all that much of it at LSU. He just looked one of the best athletes on the field. Quick first step, was fluid, just looked like an absolute monster out there at times. Just reliable hands, good initial burst, good quickness out of his breaks, and was running some really crisp routes to go along with it. This is a guy that's going to creep into my top 5 tight ends. And I wasn't the biggest Mason Taylor guy. I don't love to put a ton of stock into these things, but if he can move like that, that really intrigues me on what he can be because the hands are there. And when he gets targeted, he's good. What I really worried about on tape was, can he create separation in one-on-ones? He did that at the Senior Bowl. He was able to create separation. He was able to get open consistently. And if he can do that at a high level, Mason Taylor could be a really good tight end in the NFL. He's got the NFL bloodlines. We know that. But overall, really, really good week from the tight end at LSU. Now we're going to get into some offensive line guys, starting with the tackles. A couple of guys that I felt like hurt their stock. Josh Connerly out of Oregon. I don't think he had a bad week. I'll get that out of the way. I thought he had a good day 1. Day 2 and 3 weren't really amazing for him. I know everyone's going to talk about the Mike Green rep where he just gets absolutely destroyed. He just looks smaller than you'd like to see. Looks really light for the position. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but he came in at 6'4", 313, 81-inch wingspan. He had some good measurements. I didn't feel like it was great. He had some inconsistencies on tape. The anchor was going to be a concern. That was kind of an issue that did show up on tape from time to time. And overall, I felt like that really didn't get better for him, unfortunately. The anchor was an issue for him this week, and it's unfortunate. I still will probably take him in a lot of first-round mock drafts because I think the tape is more important. But there is some things there that's like, okay, not the strongest guy in the world. Okay, the anchor still has some inconsistencies. I still like Connerly, still think he's a first-round talent, but definitely something to monitor as we kind of continue through draft season. Now we're going to get to 2 lesser tackles that I was pretty underwhelmed by. Logan Brown, this one hurt because I was ready to plant a flag on Logan Brown Island if he had a good week at the Senior Bowl. He had a couple of good reps. I felt like it wasn't all bad from Logan Brown, but it felt like time and time again, this guy was just getting beat. Very similar to Connerly, but at a much larger scale. The anchor was not good. That was an issue that, again, I noticed on tape with him, at Kansas. I watched his tape this weekend. He played off balance a lot, ended up on the ground. He played high, and it felt like he got beat inside. All of those things continue to show up, and I felt like his anchor really struggled. The play strength is going to be a concern with him. I didn't think he had a bad week. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it was a bad week from him. There were some good moments. He didn't move down my board or anything like that, but definitely a player that the anchor does concern me. And I worry what his ceiling is at the next level, particularly in pass protection. He's a really good run blocker, really good athlete in space. Can he be consistent in pass protection? That's going to be the question. Didn't really see that in the one-on-ones. Didn't really see that at any point. And that does concern me. And the other tackle that I was very underwhelmed by, to be completely honest with you, was Jalen Travis from Iowa State. Travis was not a guy that I loved, to be completely honest. Got a 6th-round grade on him. The measurements were insane. 6'7", 341 pounds, 10.25-inch hands, 83.5-inch wingspan, 34.5-inch arms. This guy's absolutely built. And you're like, okay, we might have something here. Like, can this guy be a potential tackle? I felt like he was one of the toughest watches on the O-line for either side, just consistently getting beat. And it's because he's not athletic. He is going to be an interesting player to watch because I don't think the athleticism is there. The lower half tightness with Jalen Travis, it's rough to watch, to be completely honest. He was getting beat outside. He could not redirect himself at all. And that concerns me for him. I didn't love his tape at Princeton, to be completely honest with you. The athletic problem, the lunging problem, that showed up from him. Plays with high pads. There were just a lot of issues, and I was hoping it would get cleaned up. The athleticism just didn't look good. He is a great O-line group, our D-line group. Don't get me wrong, but you got to be able to perform, and I just didn't feel like Travis really brought it on the O-line, and that does concern me about what his potential is. So he overall is a player that probably going to be a late day 3 developmental tackle at the very best for me. Going to move down my board, and it was a tough watch for me with Jalen Travis. Another tackle that I really liked this week, we're getting into some positives here, Ariante Ursery. I feel like a lot of people gave up on Ursery too soon, to be completely honest. This is a guy that I had as my number 3 tackle for a majority of the regular season. Then I went back and watched Josh Simmons, and yeah, I'm not going to lie. Josh Simmons is probably, if he stayed healthy, would be my tackle 1. Ursery's still my offensive tackle 4. Good measurements, 9 3/8-inch hands, 34-inch arms, 81 1/8-inch wingspan. Pretty good. People want to say he could be a guard because the athleticism, all that. I felt like he was the only guy that actually did a good job against Mike Green this week. We'll get to Mike Green here in a little bit because wow. But Ursery, I felt like, did an overall good job. It wasn't a perfect week by any stretch of the imagination, but I thought he played well. He looked strong. He looked the part, and he looked like a tackle. There are some people that are going to come away from this weekend and say, I didn't see it with him. And I've already seen people saying he's tackle 1 in this class based off of what we saw. I'm not going to go that far with Ursery. He's still my tackle 4, but I thought the positives were there. He showed good footwork. He showed the athleticism, and he showed good anchor. That's really all you can ask for with Ursery, and I thought he played really, really well this week. Was a big winner for me at the tackle position. Another winner for me, Anthony Belton out of NC State. Now, a little plug here. If you guys do want to go check out my Patreon page, I got to interview Anthony this offseason. Really good kid. I thought that the sky was the limit, and he was maybe the best tackle at in the entire Senior Bowl, to be completely honest. I thought Ozzie Trapillo was pretty good. I thought Marcus Mbow showed some good stuff. Wyatt Milam was pretty good. Anthony Belton was just dominant. 6'5", 345 pounds, 10 1/4-inch hands, 34 5/8-inch arms, and an 83 1/8-inch wingspan. Overall, really good measurements from him there. I thought he dominated in the one-on-one, particularly day 1. He was just powerful. He was able to match power for power, had great measurements. He showed excellent footwork, but the hands just absolutely popping guys left and right. This is a player that, if you don't know, get to know him. People are saying he might convert best to guard because there are still some limitations with him athletically. But man, I think the guy has all the traits to be a right tackle in the NFL. I do. He's got the good frame. He showed good anchor. He showed good footwork, good power. He can move pretty well. I loved what I saw from Anthony Belton this week, and he was a big time riser for me in this class. I thought he had one of the best weeks of any offensive lineman in the entire class. Maybe the biggest winner of the entire Senior Bowl practice sessions was North Dakota State's Gray Zabel. And as a tackle, I had major concerns with Zabel. I was like, this guy probably goes third round. I don't love it. As a guard or as a center, I think this guy is a first round pick. And from what we saw, immediately he played all the interior positions, played guard, played center. I was like, okay, we might have something here. I mean, absolutely dominant. The athleticism was there. The get off the line of scrimmage is there. We saw that at North Dakota State. With these small school guys, and we'll talk about it with the next player as well, you just want to see a guy that fits in. Can he make a name for himself? Can he stand out athletically against better athletes, presumably? And Zabel did that. I thought he was really, really good. Just the anchor was really impressive. His hands were really good. Just was not letting guys go. Just really impressive all week long. And just a guy that probably is going to end up getting a first round grade for me, simply because I think as a guard, this guy could be a legitimate day one starter. He's athletic. He's got good hands. The anchor looked way better than it did on tape. I thought the anchor was a big concern. The pass pro was going to be a concern. I thought Zabel looked really, really comfortable in those areas. I have no notes with Gray Zabel. Whether he's a guard, whether he's a center, it doesn't make a difference to me. I thought he was absolutely fantastic this week, and is going to be a guy that I'm going to be taking pretty high in some of these 7-round team mocks moving forward. Another player that I will be the first to say I did not see it with Miles Frazier this summer. I felt like he was clunky, didn't really have a lot of high upside moments for me. Yes, he had good size. The hand placement was solid, but I felt like his anchor was bad. I felt like he had some bad run angles. I'm going to go back and watch his 2024 tape because I didn't love it in 2023. This is a guy that I might take in the second or third round right now. He was absolutely phenomenal all week long. And this was, again, a player that I didn't see it with. Incredible hands, was able to win the leverage battles one-on-ones. He was just really, really impressive. He looked athletic. He has great size, 6'5", 324 pounds, 80 and 3/8 inch wingspan, 33 and 3/8 inch arms, above average size for a guard. All of those things really, really impressive for me. And I thought the movement skills were there. He looked really comfortable against good competition, played well against Walter Nolan, did well against Deion Walker. I mean, just a really impressive week from Miles Frazier. One of the biggest winners of the week for me. He is a guy that is going to probably be a borderline top 100 prospect for me now. I didn't see that coming into the week. So big ups to Miles Frazier for what he was able to accomplish this week, and one of the biggest winners. 2 LSU guys going up on my board. Sacramento State doesn't produce a lot of these prospects. Jackson Slater is a guy that I love. I took him to the Titans in my 7-round team mock for them. He's a guy that is going to be very, very close to cracking my top 10. You know what? Now I'm looking at it. He probably will crack my top 10 interior guys in this class. I just love the guy. 6'3", 320 pounds. He just looked athletic. He looked the part athletically. That's what you wanted to see from Jackson Slater. You weren't asking to see any high-end leverage battles, right? Even though he did that, I thought he looked really comfortable. The hands were there, was able to counter pass rush moves, move his feet well, anchor strong. Those are things you wanted to see. But with these FCS prospects, the question's going in, can they make a name for themselves, and can they look the part athletically? I thought both Gray Zabel and Jackson Slater both did exactly that. I thought Slater had a really strong week, and I think he's going to continue to move up boards. I like the guy. I was higher on him coming into the year than most, and I still think he's really good. One of the best pass protecting guards in this class, and I'd like to see him improve in the run, but from what we saw athletically with him, those concerns are starting to dwindle for me. I really like Jackson Slater. Think he's a 3rd to 4th round prospect right now, and I thought he had a really strong week in Mobile. Another major winner for me this week, and a guy that I don't think anyone saw this coming. He was the last guy added to the Senior Bowl roster, was North Carolina center Willie Lampkin. Now, it did not start off pretty for Willie Lampkin. The measurements came in on Sunday, and you're like, oh boy, Willie Lampkin might not be drafted with these measurements. 5'10", 270 pounds. Both of those are the smallest measurements since like the 90s for an interior offensive lineman. He's short. He's got shorter arms. He's undersized at 270. It's like this guy's just going to get absolutely beat by power every single time. And did the complete opposite. He won the leverage battles. He was able to kind of make some strong plays for himself. He looked strong. He looked the part physically. And I thought he looked really, really good. This is a guy that is graded out very well with PFF the last few seasons. And the question was never really the athleticism or the technique. It was the size. And if he can play that well at his size, that's great news. I don't know where I would take him because the size, it's just unseen at the NFL level. We don't see guys like this. But I think there's some positive things to take away. He looks strong. He's flexible in his lower half. He showed the waist bend that you wanted to see. It was able to win some one-on-one battles that I was really pumped up to see. So I liked what we saw from Willie Lampkin, and I thought he was a big winner of the week for me. Now we're going to the defensive side. Unfortunately, got to start with a negative, and Landon Jackson, tough week for him, I felt like. Didn't look strong, didn't look in control. I think when you look at the measurements were a little alarming with him. He's a guy that everyone is like 6'7", 280. He's going to have great wingspan, and he came in at 6'5", 273. Now, don't get me wrong. Those are great measurements, but it's not the 6'7" that we thought he was. 10-inch hands, 33 and 5/8 inch arms, 82 and 3/4 inch wingspan. Really good measurements from him. And then we get to the practice, and there were just multiple reps where he would try and bend or he would try and win with a hook. He just looked out of control, didn't seem to have a very consistent pass rush plan. But more concerning for me, it was the balance. It seemed like time and time again, Landon Jackson ended up on his backside, ended up on the ground, and you just didn't want to see that from him. This is a guy that I think a lot of people are really high on. I never really I like Landon Jackson. I got a 2nd round grade on him. I never have really been able to get on the Landon Jackson hype train. I don't think he's the greatest athlete in the world. I felt like he didn't have a lot of pass rush moves on tape. That showed against the Senior Bowl tackles. I just didn't think he had a lot of moves, didn't rush with a lot of creativity. That's going to be a concerning factor for him. And if he can't play on balanced, it's going to be a concern. I thought he had a tough week. There weren't a lot of players that got the stock down, as you can see, but Landon Jackson, to me, unfortunately was a player that did. Getting into the winners, though, Mike Green. I mean, I put out a tweet in November saying Mike Green's a top 5 edge in this class, and you guys can fight me on that. I love Mike Green. I have been on the Mike Green hype train for a long time now, and it's just so refreshing to see that Mike Green is just absolutely dominating. I'm going to say it for those of you that want to, my big board hasn't been updated yet. It will be updated on Saturday. So for those of you that are keeping up with the draft guide and the big board, Mike Green might end up being a top 10. He might end up sneaking into my top 5 players. He will be a top 10 player for me without a doubt. This dude is unbelievable. He has jumped up to my number 2 edge rusher in the draft class ahead of James Pierce. Just unreal. 6'3", 251. Better measurements there than we were expecting. The initial measurements came back and he was like 238. And everyone's like, oh no, this is going to be a bad week from Green, isn't it? And it's like, all right, let's see. And then the official measurements came back and it was 251. It's like, okay, this is good. 32 and a quarter inch arms. So he has smaller arms for the position. That might concern some people, but man, what an unbelievable day. Day one, really strong. Had some reps where he was bending around the tackle, and The way that he was able to stay on his feet while bending, incredible. Showed really good tenacity and upside in the run defense drills, which you love to see. And then day 2, just played pissed off. He looked like he was a man on a mission, had something to prove. And then he's got the rep on Josh Connerly. Josh Connerly is not like, he's not this like day 2, day 3 tackle. This is a guy that's getting first round buzz. Mike Green absolutely bulldozes him. He doesn't just like have a nice move. He wins with power. He runs through his chest. That was something that I was not expecting to see from Mike Green. In my scouting report, I would like to see him develop more of a power profile. Feels like he mostly wins with finesse. If that's the power that Mike Green is playing with, this is a franchise edge rusher. I know he's undersized, and there are going to be teams that don't value that. This guy has the power. He can defend the run at a high level, but if he can win with finesse and with power, this guy is going to be a menace. I don't think enough people, like everyone's going to have Mike Green as their big winner. I don't think enough people realize, though, this is a major, major deal for him because the power wasn't concerned, and this dude was unreal at the Senior Bowl. Is the biggest winner of the week for me by far. Just absolutely incredible day from Mike Green. Another big winner, though, on the defensive line was Shamar Stewart. Now, Shamar Stewart, a player that I like. I had him at around my 6'7" edge rusher in the class, and I think he gets a lot of praise. And there was some stuff that I was like, the guy just wins with his athleticism. Like the moves aren't there. And I felt like this week he showcased the moves better than I think some people are going to give him credit for. Had some nice rip throughs. There was one rep, I believe it was against Emory Jones in day 2, where he just runs through Emory Jones. He had multiple plays in the 11 on 11, so beats a tackle off the edge. Would have had a clean strip sack on this play. Shamar Stewart was dominant. Athletically, was just built different. I mean, the measurements with this guy are ridiculous. 6'5", 281 pounds, 9 1/8 inch hands, 34 1/4 inch arms, 83 1/2 inch wingspan. Those numbers are not normal. This guy has an unbelievable athletic, traitsy upside. I mean, this guy might get taken ahead of guys like James Pierce, like Mike Green, that I like better simply because the athletic upside with him is just unbelievable. I mean, I believe I compared him to Keon White, and he's an even better athlete than Keon White was. A really good week from him. I thought he looked like one of the best athletes on the field. One with power, one with finesse. Just an awesome week from Shamar Stewart. Don't have enough positive things to say about him. Another big winner for me on the defensive line was my guy David Walker. Another guy, David Walker, is a player that I have just been batting the table for. I'm like, this is a guy you want on your football team. I took him in my Patriots 7-round mock. And Patriots fans were not happy with it. They're like, we're not taking an FCS guy in the 3rd round. Well, you might not be able to take him in the 3rd round because he might be a 2nd-round pick right now. Incredible week from David Walker. Again, I'll go through my scouting report. Just a guy that he felt like he had some balance concerns. I felt like this is a guy, we knew how absolutely freakish of an athlete he looked like. Could he be that athletic freak against better competition? The answer was yes. He showed that quickness. He showed the rip through moves. He showed all that, but the power profiles showed up as well. Can he convert speed to power? It was a resounding yes against legitimate tackles. David Walker's a day 2 prospect for me. I'm not thinking twice about it. I would take him in the top 50. He probably will end up being a top 50 player for me when it's all said and done. 6 foot, 267, 31 3/4 inch arms. A little alarming. He has shorter arms for the position, so he might fall down boards. But, I mean, it's a guy compared to Chop Robinson, and I think he has that type of profile, that type of athletic traits. He's a really, really good edge rusher that I just think is just going to continue to rise up boards throughout this process. And this was refreshing to see another one of my guys just go down to Mobile, dominate. Love David Walker. Another winner for me was Oluwafemi Oladejo. Oladejo, I watched this summer, was a guy that I was like, this guy's not very good. He's okay in coverage, and that's it. The reason he wasn't very good was because he was playing out of position. UCLA played him as an inside middle linebacker last year. They converted him to edge, and I thought he was awesome. This is a guy that is going to crack my top 20 edge rushers because I think he has the type of football makeup and the type of athleticism I want to buy into. 6'2", 261 pounds, 9 3/4 inch hands, 33.5 inch wingspan, 33.5 inch arms, and an 80 3/4 inch wingspan. Super impressive athlete. Just the bend with him was ridiculous. Just a guy that felt like he could win in a lot of ways. He is a powerful player, can drop back into coverage, but the bend was really, really impressive for me. I thought he just looked remarkable this week and is a player I'm just excited to do a breakdown on because he's a player that I think is going to be a major riser throughout this process. Wouldn't be shocked if he's a guy that gets taken at the back end of the third round as just a dart throw because I think he's that type of prospect, to be totally honest with you. He's really athletic. First year at edge, put up some solid production, but I think he's only going to get better as time goes on. Oladejo had a really good week for me. Moving on to the interior defensive lineman. Only one guy that we talked about, up, stock down. And there were a lot. Walter Nolan, Aeneas Peebles. I thought those guys had good weeks. I thought TJ Sanders had a really good week. Darius Alexander. I had him as my number 15 interior guy. Firmly a top 10 guy in this class for me in the interior class. And that's like really, really tough to do in this group. I have him ahead of guys like Joshua Farmer, Ty Hamilton, Aeneas Peebles, who we just mentioned, Jordan Phillips. Darius Alexander, really, really good week. 6'3", 304 pounds, so a little bit lighter than you'd like to see. Looks like he's 280, though, and he plays like he's 280. But the other measurements, 10 1/4 inch hands, awesome. 34 inch arms, 82 1/4 inch wingspan. All measurements that I absolutely loved. It was just continue to dominate days 2 and 3. Certainly one of the biggest talking points of day 2, just was powerful, showed an incredible array of pass rush moves, which you saw in his tape at Toledo, but could it continue to develop? And the answer was yes. It was really impressive. And then day 2, continued to win with more finesse, more pass rush moves, and was able to just win the one-on-one trench battles. That's what you wanted to see from Darius Alexander. He did it at a ridiculously high level, and I was super impressed. He's going to be a top 100 guy in this class with me without question, and I'm going to try and find a way to get him in my top 75 because it was really, really impressive what he was able to do this week. Second year in a row where Toledo just has a dominant player on their team that just balls out at the Senior Bowl. Rocking Quinyon Mitchell's jersey right now. His teammate, though, Darius Alexander, absolute monster, big winner of the week for me. And getting in to the secondary players, we talked about there aren't going to be any linebackers that we're going to talk about, but a couple of guys that I thought had solid weeks for themselves, Jeffrey Bassa, Jack Kaiser, and Demetrius Knight. Demetrius Knight is going to be a really interesting one. He's going to probably get close to my top 10, but I like a few linebackers in this class. So those are the linebackers that I want to highlight, but getting into the corners, and unfortunately we have to start with who I think is probably at the worst Senior Bowl of any player. It was Tommy Hill. Tommy Hill was a guy that played well against bigger receivers this year. Got absolutely torched by Jaden Higgins. It happens. Jaden Higgins had a pretty solid week. But it was time and time again where I just felt like his reaction times felt really inconsistent. He seemed out of position a lot. He continued to find himself flat-footed in coverage. That scares me about him. He just looked like he was slow to react, could not really figure out which way the receiver was going to go. And by the time the receiver made a move on him, they were 4 yards ahead of him. He looked slow. He looked like the reaction time wasn't there. This is a former receiver, so the fact that he looked so heavy on his feet is majorly concerning for me. And was a guy that I had in my top 15 corners, moved him outside of my top 20. And he might move even further than that. I just really did not like what I saw from Tommy Hill. And not quite as bad as Kalen King last year, but it feels similar to that. I thought he had a really, really rough week down in Mobile. Getting into some of the positives here, Azariah Thomas. out of Florida State. I had pushed back on the narrative that he was a first-round corner. I was like, okay, like he's a good player. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think I'd take him in the first. Yeah, he's a first-round corner. The first day, it did not look good for him. I was like, like looks slow, doesn't look explosive, was getting beat by Tez Johnson and Jalen Noel. I was like, okay, let's see how he comes back. And days 2 and 3, absolutely textbook. Had 2 interceptions at least on day 3, which I wanted to see. The ball skills were not there for him at Florida State. He showcased that. He looked sticky in coverage, was disciplined for the last 2 days, and I loved it. I thought he had a really strong week. The measurements were fantastic with him. 6'1", 191, 10 1/8 inch hands, 32.5 inch arms, 77.25 inch wingspan, which I really loved. Long arms, big hands, fast, sticky in coverage. Everything you wanted to see from Azariah Thomas, you saw. He's a first-round corner for me. Shout out to Alex from Hail Mary Sports, James Foster. They were on it before anybody. Azariah Thomas had a really strong week. Moving on to another corner that I really liked, it was Quincy Riley. I think he was the best corner at the event. And yes, that means ahead of Azariah Thomas. He is a player that he's a bit of an undersized guy, 5'10", 192. But man, was absolutely locked down in one-on-ones. And that's an event that typically favors the wide receivers. He just looked locked down. It looked like nobody could stop him. He was quick, was shifty, change of direction was on point. Everything you wanted to see from Riley, I thought you saw, and then some. Looked incredible with the football in the air, was able to react. I was just blown away by him, and he's a guy that is going to be in my top 10 corners. I think he was really, really strong this week. Feels like similar to Jarvis Brownlee, but I think he's way better as an athlete. And Jarvis Brownlee was great for the Titans this year. I loved Quincy Riley. Was a big winner for me this week. Another big winner for me, Upton Stout, another undersized corner, came in at 5'8", 178. The measurements were not great. 9 inch hands, 30 3/8 inch arms. Didn't love to see that. And then 73 3/8 inch wingspan. It's like the measurements are not there. Let's see what he looks like in coverage. He was locked down. He looked the part. He's going to be a slot corner at the next level, but super shifty, change of direction, on point. Athleticism was there. Again, made some good plays with the football in the air. And I thought he just looked really fast. That was the big standout for me. Just looked like he was able to change direction, was able to stick with receivers and man coverage really, really well. I liked Upton Stout coming into this event. I thought he was underrated. He continues to be an underrated player for me. He's going to be a borderline. Right now I have him as cornerback 21. We're going to go through that again. But I liked Upton Stout. I thought he had a really strong week, and it's going to be a stock-up player for me. Another winner, Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky. We did a breakdown on him on Saturday, and I was like, look, I like Maxwell Hairston, but can he play in man coverage? Like, Kentucky runs like 75% zone. He's got zone instincts. I didn't think the athleticism was really there. What is he going to look like in man-to-man coverage? That was really my big concern with Maxwell Hairston. And he dominated. I thought he was one of the best man corners in the class. And that's refreshing for me because I think he's a guy that is going to move up simply because of that. He's got good size. Well, he's got okay size, 5'11", 179. But overall, if you can play sticky and man-to-man coverage, you're going to get drafted high. It's just the nature of the business. And he showed the ability to just stick with receivers, glued to their hip, change of direction, really good, showed the ball skills, was physical, was one of the only guys that I thought did well against Jack Besh. I mean, a lot of positives here with Maxwell Hairston, and loved what I saw from him. A big stock-up guy for me. Another winner, a lot of DBs I thought really impressed me this week. It was Melvin Smith out of Southern Arkansas. Now, you guys are not going to be too familiar with Melvin Smith. Haven't talked about him at all on this channel. I watched his tape. I want to say I watched his tape on like Monday night. I was like, let me just look at this guy from Southern Arkansas, see what he's all about. D2 school. It's very difficult to try and find his tape, by the way. And like, there were some things I liked on tape from him. I thought he looked Like he could play on the boundary, he could play safety, had good closing speed, good athleticism. With a D2 guy like Melvin Smith, the question is he going to look the part against NFL competition, against these D1 athletes? He absolutely did. I don't think enough people are talking about this. This is a guy that's going to probably get close to my top 25 in terms of corners. He was really, really good in coverage. I thought he was one of the biggest standouts for me. He looked like he belonged as a part of this competition. Great change of direction, good long speed. He had some ball skills, made some plays with the football in the air. We didn't see a lot from this guy. There's not a lot of tape out there, but man, if that's what you see, I'm taking a day 3 flyer on this guy. Very similar to Quantez Stiggers to me, as a guy that not a lot of tape, but the tools are interesting, could be a nice slot guy. I love it. I think he's one of the more underappreciated, least talked about guys in this entire event right now. And I thought he had a really strong week. So, guys, that's going to do it. 30 players there. Stock up, stock down. Which Senior Bowl players did you guys think had the best weeks of the for themselves? Would love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. Leave a like on this video. Comment down below who you think was a big winner. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.